Wednesday, September 13th, 2023. This committee meeting is being convened by electronic means as authorized under Part 14 of the Procedure Bylaw. The City of Vancouver's electronic meeting, as such committee member may participate in person or by electronic means. If a council member attending by electronic means lose the connection during the voting process, team members are available to get you back online quickly while the voting process is suspended. The team members' contact information has been circulated to you. Video of council members speaking, presentation, and the vote results will be projected on the live stream when available. Council members participating virtually are reminded that in accordance with the Section 14 of the Procedure Bylaw, members must enable their video to confirm quorum. Any council member whose video is disabled will be marked absent for that portion of the meeting. Any comments on the agenda can be sent to the council using the web form on the city website. The link to that form will be tweeted out at Van City Clerk. I also want to note City of Vancouver's long-standing commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion, including almost respect for all genders. I remind council that when addressing speakers and team members, we will avoid using gender honorifics, and we will instead refer to the person by the first and last name, role, or title. We acknowledge we are on the unceded homelands of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. We thank them for having care of this land and look forward to working with them in partnership as we continue to build this great city together. I also want to take a moment to recognize the immense contributions of the City of Vancouver's team members who work hard every day to help make our city an incredible place to live, work, and play. In case of emergency where we need to evacuate the building, I would like to direct your attention to the exits. There are 2 exits beyond the glass doors to the left. And if these exits are obstructed, please direct your attention to the 4 exits in this chamber. Please use stairs, do not use elevator. I also want to highlight that there is a defibrillator located at the end of the hallway outside of this council chamber. Clerk, may we have the roll call, please?
Yes. Mayor Sim. Councillor Carr. Councillor Kirby Young has a leave of absence for the day for civic business. Councillor Dominato. She's here somewhere, but not available at the moment. Councillor Bligh has a leave of absence for civic business all day. Councillor Boyle. Councillor Fry. Councillor Montague. Councillor Claassen. Councillor Meisner. And Councillor Zhou is in the chair. The meeting has quorum chairs. Zhou.
Thank you, Clerk. This is the plan for the day. We have 10 items of business on today's agenda, 7 reports, and 3 council members' motion. We will reconvene in camera meeting at 11 today. So does anyone want to bring a motion to change the time? Okay, Councillor Claassen, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move that we change the time for in-camera to 10 a.m. today, please.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Claassen. We need a seconder for this item. Seconded by Councillor Montague. Councillor Montague. Yeah. Councillor Boyle, please go ahead.
Thanks. I just have a point of procedure. Can we lay out, I'm just learning about this right now, so just trying to understand when we're coming back to the rest of the items on this agenda.
We will be back at 1:30 in the afternoon.
Okay, and what's the reason for the change? I mean, it's in camera, I'm just wondering because staff are here and I thought we were spending the morning on this item. Maybe that's a question through you, Chair, to the mover of the motion. I'm just trying. Oh, got it. Okay. Okay.
Okay, so moved by Councillor Claassen, seconded by Councillor Montague. All in favor say yea. Opposed say nay. Okay, the motion carries. So we will reconvene in camera meeting at 10 a.m. this morning, and the council will reconvene at 1:30 p.m. to complete the remaining items on the standing committee agenda. So I would like to remind council member that if amendments are brought forward, they must be submitted to to city clerk in final written form before council member introduce them. Please ensure clerk has received your amendment by using the council meeting amendment DL. Before we begin to hear from registered speakers, I would like to remind council and members of the public that in accordance with the updates to the procedure bylaw that we enact at the standing committee of May 10th, 2023, public speakers only speak for up to 3 minutes, and council may not ask questions of speakers. I would also like to remind speakers that they should state whether they are in support or in opposition of the recommendations and may only speak once. I will also ask if speakers are residents of Vancouver if it is not noted on the speakers list. Following the last speaker of the speakers list for each item, we will go back to through the list for those who were not present when their name was initially called. Okay, so as chair of this meeting, I'm suggesting that for the reports with no speakers, we adopt the recommendation collectively in a single motion. Reports 3 to 7 have no speakers. Does any member wish to hold any items for debate or questions to the team members? Councillor Boyle, please go ahead. Oh, thank you. Okay, I guess no. Does any member wish to declare conflict of interest on this consent item? Oh, Councillor Fry.
Yeah, Chair, I'm going to recuse myself on the vote for item number 4.
Okay.
For conflict of interest, as I have a family member in the employment.
Thank you, Councillor Fry.
As I have a family member in the employment of the contract award.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Fry. Seeing no other person on the queue, so we need a motion to adopt the recommendations contained in report 3 to 7. Moved by Councillor Montague, second by Councillor Clausen. Okay, all those in favor say yay. Opposed say nay. Okay, motion carries. So the following items have been approved on consent. They are number 3, quarterly capital budget adjustment and closeout. Number 4, contract awards for architectural consulting for redevelopment of Vancouver Aquatic Center. Number 5, clarification of construction and project values in the buildings bylaw. Number 6, 1039 Mainland Street, 1097130 is banter rooms due license, liquor primary license application, liquor establishment class 2. Number 7, 2023 UBCM conference sponsorship of programming. Thank you. Now we move to the next section, reports. Okay, so clerk just informed me that the city clerk saying that we only need 90 minutes for the in-camera meeting. So that means we can reconvene here at 11:30 instead of 1:30. So we really need a motion here to reconsider the previous motion. So okay, please go ahead, Councillor Boyle.
I just wonder, rather than breaking at 10, coming back at 11:30, having a half hour before lunch, breaking, can we just go now until 10:30 and do camera for 90 minutes until lunch? Just seems like a lot of back and forth, and we have staff here and I presume a speaker here to this item.
Thank you, Councillor Boyle. Councillor
Kinda.
Clausen, do you want a response to this?
I support the decision to come back at 11:30. I realize that it's a shorter period, but it allows us to move through some of the business here. I don't think we have a lot of speakers, and we have an opportunity to debate in that time as well. So I would like to stick to the 10 a.m. in camera and adjust the request to reconvene to 11:30.
Okay, so with yeah. Okay, so Councillor Carr.
Yeah, sorry, it's just a point of information through you to the mover. Is this in-camera meeting this morning replacing the in-camera meeting this afternoon?
So I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so we're not meeting again as we normally do at 1 o'clock. We're just meeting at, okay. Just clarifying that wasn't clear before.
Okay, so we need a motion to reconsider the previous motion. And second by Councillor Meissner. All in favor say yea. Opposed say nay. Okay, so the motion carries. And clerk, now we need a new motion for, yeah, okay, so now we need a motion to reconvene at 11:30 for the council meeting instead of 1 p.m. Okay, moved by Councillor Montague, second by Mayor Sim. All in favor say yea. Opposed say nay. Okay, the motion carries. So now the plan is we're gonna reconvene the in-camera meeting at 10 a.m. and coming back in council meeting at 11:30 instead of 1:30. I hope everyone's clear about this motion. Thank you. Okay, so reports. R1 is approach to identifying opportunities for increased revenue for the 2024 budget. Does any member wish to declare conflict of interest for this item? Okay. We have team members here to answer the questions on this item. Council, you have up to 5 minutes to ask questions of team members. Are there any questions? It's not in my script. So I guess there's no presentation for this?
Yeah, Chair, no, we don't have a presentation, but we're happy to speak to the report.
Okay. Councillor Carr, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So my first question is regarding the annual budget surveys that we do in terms of soliciting public opinion around what they would prefer. I know that every year I've seen that survey. It has differentiated, do you support tax increases focused on property tax versus permit fees? It's always come back saying permit fees. So could you just briefly, summarize what those percentage differences are? And I have a second question in follow-up, but I want to make sure, I want to affirm on the public record that it is, my memory is correct, that it is always a preference for the permit fees.
So we're just getting, I don't have the actual percentages, but we'll get those to you shortly, but I can speak to generally. So that's a question we typically ask each year as part of the budget survey. And again, it's asking for preferences to balance the budget between property taxes, user fees, reducing services, and there's a variety of options, but essentially we've seen a consistent trend of preference for using user fees as a means rather than property tax to balance the budget. For this year, we have our surveys in progress. The results will be reported back to council later in the process prior to the public budget release.
Right, great. And maybe if you've got staff looking up that data about the response from the public on that survey, could they also identify or at least relay publicly if we know there's any particular differences in the demographics of who we survey? Do we try to get at a balance between property owners, non-property owners, different age groups, different areas of the city? You know, I'm sorry, but I just don't remember that information from previous surveys. You probably reported on it, but it would be good to have it in public record.
Yeah, and we do have a detailed public document around our survey, which we can share a link to that information, which is available on the web. And when we conduct the survey, we do collect demographic information. We do take steps working with our engagement team to ensure that it's capturing the views of a variety of demographic participants in the survey.
Yeah. And again, specifically, I'm very interested in knowing if we have questioned in the past, are you a property owner or not? Because that could bias the survey if it's a lot more property owners. So that's one piece I'd just like an answer back on. Meanwhile, while that data is being collected, unless Patrice MP looks like she's just about ready to report.
Yeah. So in terms of the numbers, we have the increase to property tax around, in terms of residents, 20%, 12% preferred increased user fees for city services that currently have fees, 12% preferred most the new user fees for services that don't currently have fees. And then below that, at 11%, was increase property taxes for residences. And so, yeah, so in summary, the preference was the preference was greater for cities to use user fees as a means to balance the budget than to use increase residential property taxes. And we also asked for people their second most preferred. So if you look at both people's first preference and second preference, again, the number is 26% for increasing our current fees, 25% for introducing new user fees, and then 21% for increasing residential property taxes. So in both cases, the feedback from residents was around preference for increasing user fees rather than increasing property tax. On the business side of things, again, an even stronger preference for user fees at over increasing property tax, where for businesses, 23% of businesses most preferred using new user fees, and 43% either most preferred or second most preferred using user fees, versus increasing property taxes for businesses was 8% and 17% respectively for most preferred and second most preferred for increasing business property taxes. So again, the overall message from that feedback was clearly a preference on both residents and businesses for increasing user fees rather than increasing property tax as a means to balance the budget.
Okay, thank you. That's good. I appreciate that especially being on public record. I have a second question, and which is around the increase in street parking fees. And it doesn't really specify details, but in the West End, where I live, the street parking fees are the highest in the city by a long shot. So would there be an intent to increase street parking fees universally across the city, or would an area like the West End, which is already so high compared to other areas, be exempt from that increase?
Good morning, Lon Leclerc, General Manager of Engineering Services. What we're trying to identify in this report is kind of larger than normal increases. So typically, we would increase parking permits by an inflationary rate across the board. The West End, we did a market correction some time ago, which gets it right into where the demand kind of meets this supply. And so people are able to find parking now, which was what so increasing the rates solved that parking problem. With other neighborhoods, the price that we charge is quite a bit behind where the market is. And so there's an opportunity for us to increase faster towards that market rate.
Oh, so there will be a differential application.
It's different in a number of different neighborhoods.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, okay, and you'll continue to maintain the fact that there can be a difference because of that big adjustment that took place in the West End?
That's correct.
Great,
Yeah.
awesome, thank you.
Sorry, with that, we are 40 seconds over. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, Councillor Clausen, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, to staff, when was the last time we evaluated these types of fees across the board? Has it happened in the last 5 years, 10 years?
You're referring to user fees?
Yes.
Yeah, we do that every year, certainly for the major fees. And most of those come to council at periodic times during the year, depending on sort of the implementation timeline and, and the business. So things like theater fees have a certain cycle when they get approved. So they are reviewed annually and approved by council. The big ones come to council. Yeah, there are some smaller ones.
But in this case, there was direction from council to look at these potential revenue tools and do probably a more wholesome evaluation than we've had in the past, which may have reflected cost of living increases in the past, right? With the exception of parking, which I realize went up quite a bit years ago.
Has a strategy behind it. Most of the others were kind of cost increases, cost escalation increases. All departments do look at the opportunity for new revenues, but again, at the outlook and looking at sort of the gap to really look at those opportunities and bring those to council, that might be maybe a little bit more focused than we would have had in other years on increasing revenue. And so that was really the direction and what staff went out to do.
When we've surveyed the public in the past, has there ever been a question or any indication where people want less services?
Actually, that is one of the questions, which is decreased services, but I'd have to check the numbers.
Okay, sure.
We'll let Colin answer that one because he's
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So that is a question that we also include on our budget feedback survey. And so the question is around, again, as a means to balance the budget, would you prefer to reduce level of services? And there is a question around offering the same services, but not necessarily the same level, for example, reduced hours or reduced frequency. And so, so the reducing the number of services was one of the bottom preferences in terms of the ranking. So it was not a popular feedback. However, looking at our existing services for areas where we may not need to offer it at the same level was ranked highly. So that is something that we'll consider as part of our budget exercise.
Very good, thanks. I just want to talk about the revenue tools because it's well understood that municipalities have been taking on a lot of services that have traditionally been provided by senior levels of government. Aside from property tax, what's the sort of the short list of revenue tools that are available Is it just these fees? Is this one of the most obvious examples of where we can help to continue to maintain levels of service?
Yeah, I think in terms of the legislative framework and the Vancouver Charter, it does limit in terms of the revenue tools that we have, and user fees on a cost recovery basis are one of the main ones, aside from property tax, in terms of generating tools to generate revenue, and you can see outlining in the different areas in this report where we have outlined there are, like, for example, the sponsorship, advertising, naming rights, and donations project outlined in this report, which is another tool, but it is limited generally, and so we've touched on the different areas where we do have authority as part of this this report.
Maybe just one thing is in the charter, some of the fees are required to only be cost recovery. You can't charge more, and other ones that don't have that requirement, in which case they can have revenue above cost, and then that revenue can go to offset other parts of the city's portfolio.
I know that we do economic testing on larger things like development cost levies, but on something like this, we probably wouldn't do that. We would probably just more survey. I know, for example, trades and contractors, the cost of those services have really gone up because of high demand. I'm just wondering if the increase, it can be justified partly by the fact that, which is about, it looks like about $30 or $36 increase per year, could be justified simply by the fact that these trades are actually charging so much more for their services right now.
Andrea, feel free to jump up, but I think when looking at it, those are an area where we can look at the market and therefore charge sort of an equivalent to other municipalities. It's not constrained by only cost recovery.
I'm at time,
Okay.
so we'll have
Okay.
to. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Clausen. We only have 4 minutes before 10, so I guess we're gonna take a recess now and coming back to chamber at 11:30. We're gonna move to the in-camera meeting at 10 a.m. Okay, thanks everyone. We'll be back at 11:30.
Hi, Warina, can you hear us?
Hi, David. I can hear you. Are you able to hear me?
Yep, thanks.
Thank you.
Through like choice to participate, and so that selection can be part of those results. But again, we use the results in a way where we take into consideration a variety of points of feedback. And for Talk Vancouver, it's a great opportunity for many people to get involved and have their inputs heard. So it's one data point, but we also have the data point coming from the Ipsos survey, which uses techniques around making sure that there's not selection impacting the.
So, because where I'm going with this obviously is that it's not just people who are signing up to talk about the taxes they're paying, but we're also capturing renters and sort of an
Yes.
equal number.
Yeah.
Presumably? Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. On some of these fee increases and, thinking specifically around business licenses and I'm, one of the big complaints we hear about business licenses is how long it takes to get a business license. Oftentimes so I'm curious that with this increase in fees, are we offering to the public an expectation that they'll get their license faster kind of thing? And maybe, just for context, what is the current wait time for a business license?
Good morning, Sarah Hicks, Chief License Inspector. The current wait time for business licenses, 80% of our licenses can be licensed within 24, 48 hours of staff getting their hands on that application and reviewing it. Dependent on the time of year, our volume really shifts related to renewals. So our wait times can vary. Right now, we're anywhere between 2 and 4 weeks before staff are working through that application and getting them through their various processes. Specifically related to these fees, we are in a technology-based process right now, looking to collapse our categories from 600 to 88. With that will come some improvements in processes, and then once that's completed, we'll move into our next phase of looking at improvements for our online applications to provide faster processing where the system can find some of those items for us and move them through in a faster pace.
So I guess messaging-wise, is there a value add that we can say, hey, we're increasing the the cost of your license? And the good news is because fill in the blank.
We are doing that work. We are going to be finding opportunities to improve processing for business applicants, find more self-serve opportunities for applicants to get copies of licenses to close their files. All of those things will come in progressive improvements throughout the processes that we're doing right now.
Okay, I want to be cognizant of the perception with this as a cash grab potentially. Question on park board fees, because there's not a lot in there about park board, and I'm curious what happens with things like the leisure access pass and sort of equitable approach to park board fees and community center and whatnot.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Steve Jackson, acting GM for the park board. We typically separate our leisure access pass from our fee setting process. So we don't revisit the leisure access pass and what's attributed to those users and how much they pay. We do that on a less frequent cycle to make sure that those amenities remain affordable for those groups. But we do a holistic review of all of our fees on an annual basis, much like engineering does to review recreation fees, golf fees, parking fees, et cetera.
Sorry, we're out of time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Boyle, please go ahead. Oh, sorry. Councillor Messner here. So the queue. Okay, there we go.
Thank you, Chair. My question's around, first question's around STR fees, short-term rental. Morning, Sarah. So I am wondering, what's our sense of what increasing the STR fee will do to compliance? What have we done in terms of research on that, as proposed in the report?
I think at the $450 rate, we wouldn't anticipate a big impact on compliance. That rate is something that, we would see being able to be covered within, depending on the value of your rental, anywhere from 1 night to 2 or 3 nights, which would cover off that cost. So we wouldn't anticipate a large impact on compliance.
Okay. Is there a ceiling for that increase that you think that would impact compliance if we went to a certain amount?
I think that's a difficult question. It's not an analysis of the market that we've conducted. I think any, that would have to be taken into consideration.
Also on the STR item, I see that it says that the fee increase would help address the shortfall between the fee revenue collected and the current shortfall of enforcing STR regulation. What does that gulf look like in terms of that shortfall?
We can look at that and get that back to you.
Okay.
Maybe in the next report.
Would be great to know what that amount is.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. That's all on STR. Next question is around ride-hailing fee increase. Morning, Lon.
Morning.
So my question is, how does the proposed ride-hailing fee increase compare to other large cities in Canada? And I'm not talking about Burnaby or Surrey. I mean Toronto, Montreal, et cetera, because we really are the downtown for the whole region.
Yes, thanks for the question. We can provide that for you. It's approximately in line with the larger cities where ride-hailing is implemented. Within the region, generally, most cities don't apply it. And then for the city of Vancouver, recognize that we actually only apply it in the Metro Core high congested area of the city, not the city at large, and only during the congested periods. So wee hours of the night, it doesn't apply.
Okay, so is it north of 16th or is it just downtown?
Generally north of 16th, that's correct. Metro Core, I think it's Arbutus to Clark and 16th to, I think it's that area, but I can confirm.
Okay, and having that fee in Vancouver, not having it in Burnaby or Surrey, for example, from your analysis, and I realize this may require a more detailed answer, has that had any impact on people's willingness to use ride-sharing services in Vancouver?
I don't know that I can provide that answer, but the fee is quite small, and it is only provided if you were picked up and dropped off in the congestion fee, you would pay it twice, but if you picked up downtown and dropped off outside of the congested area, you would actually only pay the once.
Okay.
And so relative to the trip, I don't believe it's big. For us, it is a bit of an offset, and it is a demand management tool. We did have to expand the number of passenger zones. They generally can't use taxi zones, and they function differently than taxis. And so we do lose parking revenue whenever we designate more and more passenger zones for those operations.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's it for me.
Thanks, Councillor Meissner. Councillor Boyle.
Thanks. I'm curious to hear if we have the ability to look at incremental, an incremental or tiered fee structure for short-term rentals. Something based on the number of nights that you rent or the size or something like that.
We certainly have the authority to do that. Administratively, that adds more complexity to the program in order to validate that type of scheme.
Okay.
So it's not something that we considered in this round, but
Is it something we've looked at before? I just know there's such a range from sort of we rent out our couch to, we're operating a pretty big high-income business of short-term rental.
yeah, it is not something that we've done analysis on in this current structure. It was something that we looked at very early on in the program and made the decision that it wasn't administratively efficient.
We know if there are other municipalities that take that approach?
We know of one municipality that has a like a 4-month kind of scheme and a year-long scheme, but they also tier based off, like, is it a bedroom, is it a number of bedrooms, is it a house, or is it a suite? There's a large variety within that mixture.
Okay. I have a couple parking questions now, and the first is where would the new parking meters go? How do we determine that? Do we have a sense of that?
Yeah, the way we roll out parking meters, it's really based on demand. And so typically it's all over the city, many different locations, where we're seeing the demand outstrip the supply. So where people are struggling to find parking, that's when we start to implement pay parking. Most recently would be Mount Pleasant Industrial Area, just northeast of the City Hall here, where it was unregulated parking. But now with all the office development that's happened in that area, it's created a lot more demand. So we've introduced the parking meters or pay parking in those areas. So it's really, I can't answer it. We've estimated based on where we see demand increasing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we, the report included an estimate of $4.8 million in revenue from new parking meters. Can you just give me a sense of how many new parking meters that?
The revenue increase is actually a full package. So in addition to, expanding the boundaries, say on Canby Street or wherever we're seeing increased demand, we also review existing metered areas and adjust those rates based on demand. So where an area becomes more popular, the rate would increase by $1 a year as per the city bylaw. So or decrease by $1 a year if it's underparked 60%. So we look at the parking densities and those rates float. So it is a combination of new meters and meter rate adjustments across the city.
Okay. One other parking question, if the park board is looking at instituting pay parking in lots around its sites, are we then looking at bringing in neighborhood parking permit programs around those areas so we don't see people parking in the neighborhood to avoid paying and then residents not being able to find parking? What's the timeline and process? on that?
Absolutely. So we're working closely with the park board on the west side beaches and the parking lots there. Those neighborhoods experience a lot of parking pressure during the summer, peak months when those beaches are extremely busy. It makes a ton of sense for us to implement those in conjunction. And typically, of course, they can be only during the busy times. They can be seasonal. They can very much respond to the demand that we see out there. But doing it in a coordinated approach is really key. And so we're pursuing that.
question, the parking rate for those parking permits is still significantly below what the market rate would be?
So that's dependent on the neighborhood. And again, we've given a range. So currently outside of the West End, which, you know, it's in excess of $400 a year, you see typically $52 to $104 a year for the parking. And the range that we're anticipating would be more from like $65 to $131 a year. And again, that really depends on the neighborhood itself. Where we're overselling permits,
You know, I could talk about parking a lot, but my time is up, so I appreciate that. Thanks, Lon.
Hey, thanks, Councillor Boyle. I'm the next one on the queue. So I have some questions. I'm going to start with the general question. So obviously, there will be some impact on the community for the increasing fees, especially, you know, maybe there will be some impact in our cultural community. So have we done any review using our equity framework to see what is the impact in Indigenous community, in cultural community?
That's specific to parking or?
Overall, the overall increase of the license fees.
I'm not, I'd have to look at the groups to respond. It doesn't sound like there's been a specific review of that by that demographic.
Okay, thanks. Now I'm going to ask some question regarding the short-term rental fees. So how this revenue will be increased, the revenue increase will be used for the enforcement?
So the proposed fee in front of you today brings the revenue in line with current costs.
Okay, so do we have enough revenue to enhance the enforcement so we can do more audit?
So it would, to increase enforcement would be an increase in cost, which would mean we would need to consider where that additional revenue would come from in order to cover off the increase in staff.
Okay, thanks. So can we do some modeling to see if we want to increase the audit to 10%, to 25%, to 50%, how much additional resource we need?
That would be work that we would have to go back and report back on. It does involve a number of different entities, not solely short-term rental team.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. And also the question, so I'm not sure if we can we use this additional revenue from the short-term rental license fees to support renters, to create more grants for supporting the renters? Is that a possibility?
Patrice?
Will we have to use that for short-term rental?
I think, Councillor, Chair, this is unrestricted revenue. So that would be a decision for Council in the budget as to if there's new investments, where those would come from, or how the funds would be allocated.
Okay, so I guess like support that using that money to support affordable housing is another possibility.
Yes, or offsetting property tax is one of many options.
Okay, thanks. The other question about let me see, the red hailing fees. So have we done any analysis to see what will be the potential impact on the congestion?
Well, in fact, we brought in the ride-hailing program right at the start of the pandemic. And so we were actually geared up to look at what impact it had. But because it came into effect in January of 2020, it was right at the beginning of the pandemic. Since then, of course, the transportation system has kind of evolved quite dramatically from a very big slowdown. So our goal with the fee was actually to reduce the number of vehicles in the congestion area, and recognizing that with ride hailing, it's very different than it is with taxis, where we know the actual number of permits. And these are generally full-time operators that are out there all the time. With ride hailing, people can choose to operate for an hour a day or a couple hours a day, and only during certain places and only during certain times. And so the goal was really around that, was to kind of reduce the negative impact on the transportation system for ride hailing.
Okay, thanks. That's all my question. So move on. Mayor Sim, please go ahead.
Oh, I'm not in the queue.
Oh. Okay, so Councillor Kirby, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks.
So just reflecting back, so I was going to ask the same questions around short-term rental and the ability in terms of increasing those fees. So having a higher fee would potentially not only give reconsiderations what I'm hearing, reflecting that back to people if they want to do it, but also potentially provides us other revenue. But we also probably want to see what the provincial legislation is going to be in terms of additional enforcement abilities in October. Is that fair?
Yeah, we understand the legislation will be tabled this fall.
Okay, but we could provide ourselves with some flexibility with a higher fee. I have one clarification question. It's on page 4 of the report, and it's the table summary that looks at the revenue, the budget amount and the revised estimate. And I just want to make sure if you can clarify I'm reading this correctly, because it actually showed $5.9 million for ride hailing in the original budget, but 2.9 in revised. Is that because originally the proposal, I'm trying to understand why it's going down instead of up. Is that because the proposal was originally going to be to double the fee from 30 cents to 60 cents? And now we're suggesting a two-step process, or why is?
Yeah, the change was around the timing, and so in the updated estimate, it's based on a 2-year phased implementation, based on industry feedback.
Okay, was it originally, just for clarity, was it originally going to
1
be
year.
a 1 year? So it
Yeah.
was going to go 30 to 60? Okay, because that stood out for me and all the other numbers were going up and that one was,
Okay, thanks.
okay. And so that was feedback from the industry and the feedback was based on, just to be clear, in terms of going back to the competitive parity question around Toronto, is that because they felt it was, where's the industry coming from on that? Because it's paid by the consumer, it's not paid by industry.
I'll have to check back with the team. I didn't talk directly to the industry myself, but the stepped increment was also just an opportunity for them to kind of adjust. So it's not implemented all at once. I don't know that, Colin, I don't know if you had any other feedback from them specifically. Yeah, we could get back to you.
Okay, and then last quick question. Obviously, just to be really clear about framing this report, this is us affirming a direction for staff to build a baseline, a budget, or not a baseline, but to build a proposed budget that will come back to us. But council will still have the opportunity to deliberate around this. So obviously, if we send you down in a direction and say, yes, this makes sense because this is what we heard from the public, that they prefer fee increases, that they're representative samples, to Councillor Fry's point, that it's statistically representative. The feedback was from renters and it was from property owners. But so you're looking for us to send you down this direction, but also sort of an endorsement for the direction. Doesn't mean we can't make tweaks later on, but we would have an issue if we suddenly change direction, because we will have built a budget with this potentially new revenue amount.
We will have built the draft budget, and then you can choose to still make changes to those. Other than things like the licenses where you're going to be asked to approve a fee today as part of that report. So then those, obviously the fee will have changed. The ones where we haven't approved the actual change in the fee, it's just part of the budget process. We just wanted to come back because that was part of the outlook to direct us to try and fill that property tax gap. So to say this is kind of the direction, make sure we're on track and didn't build in too much and that didn't work or too little, but you can still make those changes or ask us to do
Okay, so
additional research.
There's room for tweaking, right? That's what I'm getting. And then the fees that we're approving today, like in the second report, is not all of the fees. It's very specific business license categories.
Just business license. And again, because of timing, different fees get approved at different times because of implementation considerations.
And what other fee increase report approvals will come to us between this report and between council considering?
There's a chart on page 5. So business licenses today, permitting will come October the 3rd. Park Board is going to review their fees November 28th, and then that will be factored in. And then we've got December 3rd, the Mountain View Cemetery fees, and then the utility and engineering fees come with.
So all fees, so in terms of the sequencing, just so everybody's super clear, all those fees will be set before council considers the operating budget.
Say that again?
I said, so just for clarity, all of those fees you mentioned will be set before council considers the operating budget.
Yes, except for the bottom ones. You'll do that at the same time. You'll set the fees at the same time as you approve the budget.
Thank you.
The later ones, yeah.
Thanks, Councillor Kirby. So now we are approaching to 12. So we need a motion to extend the meeting past 12 to finish the business, so we don't keep people waiting. So moved by Councillor Dominado and second by Councillor Clausen. All in favor say yeah. Opposed say no. Okay. So the next one is Councillor Dominado, actually. Yeah, please go ahead, Councillor Boyle.
I'm just seeking clarification. The motion is to continue the business of this council meeting until we finish going
Yes.
through lunch. Okay.
That's the motion on the floor.
Okay. I been a lot of changing of the agenda today, so I just want to state for the record, I have a prior commitment at lunch. I can't stay through it. I really hope that in the future we can better plan our schedule so we're not doing this and everyone can equally participate. We had a previous schedule that we adjusted because of, I understand, other councillors' abilities to attend or not attend, and all these last minute changes really impact staff schedules, but also the rest of us who are also planning, and it feels very unfair that these schedule changes are being made on the fly. So I will just say I won't be around for the next hour, and I am sorry for that and disappointed that we're making so many on the fly schedule changes.
Okay, sorry, Councillor Boyle, your point is well taken. Thank you so much. Okay, we're gonna continue. So Councillor Dominado, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And through you to staff, and I'm asking some questions that are relevant to the second report, just in the interest of time. But in the context of looking at our fees, I know that we've honed in on a few, particularly to focus on that weren't maybe on par with other jurisdictions that really were low. But I'm curious what approach we take to overall looking at all, when you look at the long list of fees that we have for various activities in the city and operations. Do we have a sense as to whether they're on par with other jurisdictions, some of the other fees? I'm not going to cherry pick ones, but just generally speaking, because I know there's an inflationary component to it each year, but can you just comment on that generally?
During the work that staff performed to evaluate the fees for this particular report, we did look at our fees comprehensively. The majority of our fees are in line with other municipalities. Some are on the high end. There are a couple on the lower end. Some of that work will be done as we come back to council in Q1 of 2024 in order to create the new fee schedule for those collapsed business license categories. So we'll do some of that work even further than we have at this particular point.
Okay. Will you also be looking at, and I am going to needle in on one because it was just raised by some individuals within the specific sector, is the liquor delivery service and liquor retail stores. Have those fees been looked at in recent years?
No, a comprehensive analysis has not been done on those.
Okay, but that might be encompassed in the work that you're undertaking this fall?
It's something that we can consider in our upcoming work.
Okay. I could always take that conversation offline. And then I've been asked this question in the past around the business licenses and automatic renewals. Is that in place? We have automatic renewals for business licenses?
So renewal notices are sent out each year, November, December, and businesses can go online and pay those and print from home. So if that's what you're meaning by automatic renewals, they happen as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, partly, and also whether there is something over maybe 3 years or 5 years, and sort of a fee that would be associated with that. Does something like that exist, and have we looked at that, and does that exist in other jurisdictions?
It's not work that we've done to date. It would involve some policy analysts in order to determine whether or not that's appropriate for our circumstance.
Yeah, it's drawing from some feedback about just the simplifying things from on the business owner end and operator is if we can, I think about maybe not the best example, but you look at passports and they're done for 5 years or 10. Now you can do a 10-year passport, and so is there some means to doing that for businesses, and what that could be established. But anyways, I'll leave it there. I know we have other things to get through, but appreciate all the answers to the questions today. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Dominado. That's the end of the questions. So now we're going to hear from the speakers for this item. Speaker, you have up to 3 minutes to speak to council. And council, as a reminder, you don't have an opportunity to ask questions of the registered speaker.
Thank you.
So we only have one speaker for this item, Emily Boston. please come to the podium. Please go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Council. My name is Emily Boston, and I'm the BC Policy Analyst for the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, which is the country's largest small business association representing and voicing the interests of 97,000 small businesses in Canada, including 9,500 in BC and 843 in Vancouver. In light of the proposed user fee increases up for discussion today, I'm sure it comes as no surprise that CFIB is here to speak on behalf of the small business community and share some of their concerns. As you know, BC small businesses are already facing tremendous cost pressures due to inflation, rising interest rates, pandemic debt, and the imminent repayment deadline of their CEBA loans. In Vancouver, the ongoing housing crisis, high cost of living, and rising property taxes compounds the financial strain felt by our city's residents and small businesses. In such a challenging economic environment, we ask Council to consider, does it make sense to add more costs for our businesses and residents through increased user fees? City staff are recommending fee increases in critical areas that directly impact Vancouver's small business community, including permits, business licenses, and parking. One suggestion is to raise the cost of a standard business license by nearly 50%. For some, this might seem like a minor adjustment, but for a struggling small business, doubling this recurring expense could be the tipping point between survival and closure. The report also suggests raising license fees for trades and contractors by nearly 100%, which I heard someone bring up earlier, and we're in the midst of a housing crisis. BC's number one limiting factor to growth right now is a shortage of skilled labor. So now is not the time to raise entry-level costs for contractors and skilled workers, or to deter experienced ones from recertifying. Finally, the proposed hikes to parking and ride-hailing fees would increase transportation costs to downtown and other hubs, which contradicts the city's stated goal of attracting more visitors and revitalizing the city. Cumulatively, the proposed fee hikes would generate more than $15 million of revenue for the city, and we're concerned that this approach would essentially turn user fees into a form of taxation without providing a clear rationale as to why this burden should fall on the backs of businesses. This spring, property taxes already increased by 11%, as I'm sure you all know, which poses substantial challenges to many small businesses. Recent CFIB survey data reveals that 70% of BC small businesses feel they do not receive fair value in city services for the taxes that they currently pay. So while we genuinely appreciate your commitment to finding innovative solutions to avoid further property tax increases, I'm here this morning to say that further user increases aren't the right answer. Right now, consumers are operating with an abnormally high level of price sensitivity, so small businesses are having to identify internal inefficiencies and adjust their spending priorities accordingly. We encourage Council to adopt a similar approach before turning to businesses and residents to generate additional non-tax revenue. In conclusion, we urge Council to reconsider the proposed fee increases given the current economic climate and challenges Vancouver small businesses are facing. Whether it's property taxes, business licenses, or exotic bird licenses, cost hikes will impact small business owners and will ultimately raise costs for our consumers. We know Council is working hard to prioritize small businesses, but let's not let your hard work go to waste by piling more fees onto their plates. Instead, we can work together to find alternative solutions that won't place an undue burden on small businesses and the public. Thank you, Council, for your time and consideration this morning.
Thank you, Emily. Thanks for speaking to Council. This is the end of the speakers list. So before we move into debate and decision, I would like to remind Council that there are two recommendations to consider. Recommendation A is for Council to receive the report for information, or alternatively, as instructed in the alternative consideration, Council could move to a motion to provide specific directions to staff on non-tax revenue generation for the purpose of developing the 2024 draft budget. Recommendation A is for information only, so no votes are required. So now we are moving to the debate. If anyone has any question or comments.
Chair, just a point of information.
Yes.
Are we extending to complete item 1 and then breaking for lunch, or are we extending to complete all the council business and then breaking for lunch? I just wasn't clear on that and realizing there's a lot on the agenda still.
The motion on the floor is complete all the business. We only have one report and one council motion left. So we should be able to finish that.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, Councillor Kirby, please go ahead.
A quick point of procedure, do we not still need a vote on receiving for information? I know it's just for information, but do we not require a vote on that? Just want to be clear.
Yeah, clerk, please clarify.
No. No motion is required for receiving for information. I believe there's a section in the procedure bylaw that states that. If it's just for information, no votes are required.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. So that concludes report 1 on the agenda. I didn't see any other people on the line. So now let's move on to the report number 2. 2024 business license vehicle for hire and animal control fees. Does any member wish to declare conflict of interest on this item? Councillor Fry?
Oh, I was signing up to speak or ask questions.
Okay, perfect. We have a team member here to present the item. Council, we have 5 slides presentation. Yeah, please go ahead, Sarah.
The report. All right. Can you all see the presentation? I have it shared through the WebEx. There we go. Thank you, Council. My name is Sarah Hicks. I'm the Chief License Inspector. I'm here today to talk about the report before you today for the licenses, animal services, and vehicle for hire fee increases. Staff prepare a report annually for Council to consider fee increases. Those increases have varied historically from 2% upwards of 5%. The Vancouver Charter does enable a unique opportunity for Vancouver where we can use business license fees to generate revenue in excess of costs of providing the program. And this report specifically speaks to Council direction from February, where staff were to develop opportunities for increases in fees for business licenses as well as the dog licenses. Before you today are a number of recommendations which will yield, if approved in their totality, in upwards of $5 million in excess of the 2023 budget. Across all license fees, staff are recommending a 6% cost increase to ensure that we are covering off the incremental costs to the city. That will cover an approximate $1.3 million in revenue. And then staff have done some work to identify a number of specific fees for Council's consideration for increase today. First is our standard business license fee. 80% of licensees pay this rate. It covers everything from offices to retail to personal services. When we're looking at that in comparison to other municipalities, we are generally on the lower end compared to our regional partners. Raising the fee to $250 would put us mid-ground. We also looked at our general and trade contractors to collapse that fee. In the work staff did to collapse our business license categories from 600 to 88. General and trade contractors is one of the moves we made to bring together. The $340 fee aligns with our largest partner municipality is Surrey, which is a similar fee. General and trades contractors are able to participate in the regional IMBL for these business types and categories. They're able to participate in 5 partner municipalities by not purchasing additional licenses in those if they pay for a top-up fee. Gas stations are also one of the smaller fees that don't compare to other municipalities, so bringing that up to $340 would make us in comparison. Short-term rentals, I think we've had a lot of discussion on that already today. The $450 does bring us into line with our costs in order to deliver that program today. And our dog license fees, we're looking to raise those to $61 in order to bring us in line with other jurisdictions. We did stakeholder consultation with a number of industry organizations in order to understand what the different scenario staff were looking at and how that would impact businesses in our region. What we heard is that businesses continue to struggle economically. They're facing a lot of pressures, not only, as a relation to city fees, but everything from the delivery of products to cost escalation on food, staffing, minimum wage costs. They categorized it as a death by 1,000 cuts. We heard quite clearly that cost escalation is something that they understood, but didn't support beyond cost escalation, and that they felt that revenue opportunities were better approached through a taxation standpoint, through property taxes, as opposed to against business licenses. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Okay, Councillor Fry, question.
Thanks, Chair. I'm curious why you didn't supply a table of sort of comparative other jurisdiction taxation kind of, or fees.
A comparison of other business license fees?
Yeah.
We do have in the report a chart that shows some of those baseline fees in comparison, and in the back we talk about the contractor fees and the short-term rental fees.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess specifically I was looking at, and I was pleased to see that in fact, these proposals would bring us in line for business license fees with, I looked at Surrey, Burnaby, and Richmond, and they're all around the $250. So I find that interesting. Although what struck me as interesting is that Richmond does their business licensing based on square footage, and that goes anywhere from $190 to $4,284, depending on the amount of square footage, which would effectively separate out the big box stores like the Walmarts from the mom and pops. Has that been a consideration in your approach?
In this particular report, no. That would take a substantial administrative and technical change for us to consider that. We will be doing ongoing work with business licensing related to the rationalized categories and our renewal timing. All of those things are going to be continued to be looked at. So it may be something that we consider in future phases, but not in this particular.
I think that might be an interesting tool to explore for sure. That would really kind of, also separate out the home business from the Walmart and that kind of approach. Where I did see a big discrepancy though was on dog licenses. Now I looked at, again, Burnaby, Richmond, Surrey. Burnaby's $32, Surrey's $41.50, Richmond is $52, and we're gonna be $61. I bring this up in the context that I know dog licensing compliance is not very high. And as a longtime dog owner myself, I've never once had to avail myself of the services of the pound, except for the time I adopted a dog from the pound. And I know that most people they don't get a license because they don't feel there's any value in getting a dog license, and it's kind of a cash grab. And I'm worried that this reflects that kind of idea that it's really a cash grab and there's no value. There's very little education around dog ownership in the city of Vancouver. There's not a lot of off-leash areas, and I think for folks who get a license, they feel like they're paying for enforcement to come and harass them when they're just being a responsible dog owner in a lack of off-leash areas. So how do we counter that narrative? Where's the value add with increased dog license fees?
Sure, I'll ask Koji Miyagi to come respond.
Good morning, or good afternoon, members of council. My name is Koji Miyagi. I'm the Deputy Chief License Inspector. I'm also the Deputy Director of Community Standards that oversees animal services and short-term rental enforcement as well. Thank you for your question through the chair. The animal, couple of pieces here. The dog license fees, there is value to the dog license. We do offer some special services if you are licensed, and it is on the website, and we are working towards better educating the public on the value of that, to a point that we've actually hired a public engagement specialist in animal services to promote the use of the animal, to have a dog license. The dog license compliance could be higher. We're about 23,000. and we think there's more dogs than 23,000 in Vancouver. And so, although that's not a rare thing in other municipalities as well, we are trying to promote that to be of a higher value. The increase of $61, that puts us, according to the chart, as maybe on the higher end. However, the other municipalities have a neuter spay or non-neuter spay rate. And that ranges, if your animal is neutered in a particular municipality, that is cheaper. And then, but if it's not, it's quite a bit higher. And so what we've done, though, we have one fee. We've combined the two. And so therefore, we set at $61 is what we're proposing. And if we take in consideration with the other municipalities do have a higher rate if the animals are not spayed or neutered. The current fee of $49 gives us about 50% of our cost recovery. The rest are picked up by the mill rate. What this will do will allow us to become better recovered. We will still have to rely on the tax rate, but we will recover better.
Seeing no other question on the queue, I'll hear from the. You have up to 3 minutes to speak to council. Council, as a reminder, you do not have speakers. So we have one speaker for this item. Wally Wagelet. Is Wally here on the line?
Chair, I'm just checking.
Yep.
So the speaker was advised of the various time changes, but and they were scheduled to come in by phone, but there is no speaker on the line.
So that's the end of our speakers list. Would someone like to move a motion for report 2? Moved by Councillor Meissner and seconded by Councillor Clausen. Council, is there any discussion? Councillor Flack, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I appreciate Koji's comments today. I am going to ask to sever out C. I do have a lot of issues with how dog licensing works. And it's funny, actually, I do recall that we used to have a separate structure for neutered or unneutered dogs. And I didn't realize that had changed because I've always had a neutered or spayed dog. But I don't feel that this is the approach that will improve compliance. In fact, I think it's going to drive less compliance. And as I've often been fond of saying, we really shouldn't be licensing dogs at all. We should be licensing dog ownership and encourage folks to be more responsible. The dog is a dog. The owners are ultimately the ones who are responsible for should be responsible for licensing and appropriate training or education as need be the case. So I'm going to ask to sever that item C, please.
Just to clarify, Councillor Fry, so you're asking CA only or the entire clause for the C?
I'll just do all of C.
All C, okay. Thank you. Okay, I guess I'm the one on the queue next. So I circulated the amendment to everyone. So if Clerk, you want me bring me to the amendment queue? It's not motion, so it's, yeah, should be good. No. Okay, perfect. Okay, so you want to bring the amendment to the screen? It's only for the motion, I think. Oh, I see. Okay, perfect. So I need to see the chair to vice chair. Oh, I'm the vice chair. So I guess deputy mayor, acting mayor. So Councillor Kirby. Yeah. Okay. So move me to the amendment queue.
Okay, Councillor Joe, would you like to introduce your amendment?
Okay.
And just confirming with the clerks, we're on an amendment queue.
Okay, clerk, can we put the amendment to the screen, please?
Councillor Joe, just to keep us moving, you can start speaking to your
Sure,
minutes,
okay.
like while the clerks are bringing that up.
Okay, I'll do that. So first, I want to thanks for the team for the answering the question regarding the short-term rental license fees. I also appreciate the suggestion to raise the fees to $450. But I think, in my opinion, this is not enough. So I'd like to propose this amendment to increase the short-term rental license fees significantly to $1,000. So as you all know, in the past a few months, I've been very deeply concerned about the illegal short-term rental throughout the city. I strongly believe the raising fees must go hand in hand with stronger enforcement. So otherwise, we risk encouraging more unregulated operators. So based on a rough estimation, so increase of fees to $1,000, that would generate roughly $2.6 million in revenue. This funding could be instrumental in offsetting the cost associated with cracking down on the illegal short-term rental. We could use this money to hire more inspectors, enforcement officers, enhancing our ability to identify and address illegal short-term rental operations. Additionally, we can use this revenue to invest in data analytics and advanced technology tools. This could help us help our enforcement efforts, make that more efficient by tracking and identifying unregistered or illegal short-term rental. I also understand the new tools will be implemented very soon, but I think we could further automate the process, make this process even more effective. Furthermore, I think this funding could support public education initiatives aims at raising the awareness of short-term rental regulations and their consequence. I think many of these illegal short-term rental operators I've spoken to, they are unaware of the rules. Some of them, they may not speak English, or they have received incorrect information from their realtors. So allocating resource for the public engagement and public education will, especially to our cultural community, will help us bridge the gap. So with that, that's the reason why I put forward this amendment.
Okay, so Councillor Joe, before we continue, I need to have a seconder for this. I'd love to, but I'm chairing. So anybody like to second this one? Seconded by Mayor Sim. Yeah, I've got it. Don't worry, Councillor Joe. But thank you. Okay, so now is there any debate? We'll now go to debate and comments on Councillor Joe's motion, which has been moved and seconded. Councillor Fry.
Yeah, Chair, first off, if I could ask a question of the mover through you.
Yes.
How did you arrive at $1,000?
So it is mainly an arbitrary number, but I think that would generate $2.7 million. So we could use that money for the enforcement. So also align with other cities' policy. We have a stronger license fees.
Okay. I completely appreciate the second half of the clause. I'm in 100% agreement about more enforcement. I'm a little trepidatious on the arbitrary $1,000. First and foremost, because it's not coming from our staff's expertise, and of course, as Councillor Joe's acknowledged, we do have significant legislation coming from the province shortly that may shed further light onto this, and a jump from $100 to $1,000 is not insignificant, and I very much appreciate the focus on illegal short-term rentals. But I've tracked this particular file for a long time, and indeed, when Airbnb was first introduced into the market and the ecosystem, it was contemplated as like, I'm going on vacation for 2 weeks and I'm renting out my house to people to house sit for me, basically, and get a little. And I'm worried that this would actually disincentivize that type of Airbnb market, which ostensibly is what we are supposed to be doing through Airbnb. And
Oh, sorry. So I think I pressed the wrong button. So
Sorry, apologies, Councillor Fry. Did we just lose a queue? Do we have a technical issue? Or do we have Councillor Fry? If we can pull Councillor Fry back up on the queue, and then you can continue. Sorry about that.
Please go ahead, Councillor Fry.
Yeah, and so I appreciate that this $1,000 makes a lot of sense as the cost of doing business for your typical illegal short-term rental operator who's doing far in excess of just a regular vacation. I don't know that this necessarily will yield those same results. I mean, I appreciate that a lot of those folks don't register in the first place. So I'm less comfortable with the arbitrary $1,000, though I appreciate that it would generate a lot of money for revenue. I worry that it would actually drive a lot of this underground. We know that there's a whole thriving market on WeChat that's happening that we don't even track like the same way we do with Airbnb. So I like the second half. I'm probably less inclined to support the 1,000 though. And I'll wait to hear what others have to say.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Fry. Councillor Meisner, you have the floor. Oh, we are having some gremlins today. Hang tight for a moment.
Thank
Okay,
you.
go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Councillor Joe for your advocacy on short-term rentals enforcement and also for bringing this proposal forward. I am supportive of it. I believe, I mean, it's a fact that our Airbnb short-term rental fee right now at $109 is among the lowest in the region. And it's very low compared to other BC municipalities as well. And that really stands out for me. Vancouver being a major tourist destination and large downtown with lots of tourists coming to Vancouver, the revenue potential in Vancouver is much higher in a smaller community. And many of these smaller communities are charging much more for short-term rental license fees. So some examples are Kelowna at $345, Squamish at $500, and Nelson ranging from $200 to $800. So again, when you think about Vancouver, when you think about the challenges we have here in terms of the housing crisis, I do think that necessitates a higher fee for STRs. We also heard this morning that there is actually a shortfall between the fees collected currently for STRs and the cost of enforcing the STR regulations. So that's very concerning to me, and that again necessitates a higher fee in my mind. Yes, to Councillor Fry's point around Airbnb, people are renting couches and that sort of thing, but there's a large number of people renting Airbnbs as businesses, and they're running a business of Airbnbs, and some of these people have multiple units as well. And I know that our STR guidelines don't allow for that, but we have an enforcement challenge on that. So I certainly think that this higher fee, given the housing crisis, given the enforcement challenges, given the shortfall of enforcing our own regulations, is appropriate. So thanks again, Councillor Joe, for proposing this, and I'm supportive of it.
Thanks, Councillor Meisner. I'd like to make a comment, so I'm going to cede the chair to Mayor Sim, just while I make a comment, while we're playing round robin with the chair. Yeah, thanks. I want to add a couple of comments. I really appreciate Councillor Joe bringing this forward. I think you need to look at it in context, and following up on Councillor Meisner's point, when Airbnb and short-term rental came along years and years ago, it was a different time. And so to Councillor Fry's comment around it was somebody who rented their home for 2 weeks, that's not the case now. And rates are dramatically different. And we're going to be discussing hotels in a minute, but let me say that Vancouver has the highest ADR, average daily rate, and that means the highest hotel rates in the country. And so it is not punitive to make back $450. If you're getting $300 a night for an Airbnb, it's probably low. And so I think that we're continuing to see that impact here. We do have a principle of recovery for business license fees, and we heard that just increasing this fee now would bring us into recovery. I think with the provincial legislation that is anticipated to come shortly in the fall, it would be a good proactive move to set up ourselves to have some flexibility if there's additional work that our staff can do so that we can be more active on enforcement, and there is potentially some resources to do that. I think that's a good chance to make this move, and we have to sequence this move now because this is when we adjust fees typically at this time of the year. And I think that's really important. And the last thing that I'll say, and I appreciated the analogy of the rates and sort of what I'll call smaller destinations from Councillor Meisner, is that this is not dramatically bold. If you look at what's happening in New York or in Quebec, they are taking dramatic steps. New York is trying to effectively wipe out short-term rental by requiring a minimum 30 days. Quebec is having significantly more punitive fees in the tens of thousands of dollars. And I think that the public are looking for a sign that council and the city of Vancouver are taking this seriously. So I think it's really important to set us up for success when we get those provincial regulations. And I think that this strikes a balance. It could actually, in my view, potentially be more punitive, but I think that this sort of hits that note in between evasion potential. And we often have these conversations when we're changing fees and percentages. We did around the empty homes tax. And actually sort of a fair fee given the fact that first and foremost, housing should be for locals in our city. So I appreciate Councillor Joe bringing it forward, and I will take the chair back. And Councillor Joe, you are next on the queue.
Thanks, Chair. So I want to be very clear. So we want to support legal short-term rental operators. In fact, we should support more because we all know owning a property in Vancouver is super expensive. We need to support them as a mortgage helper to do their business, but they need to comply all the rules and the regulations. And I don't think this amendment could hurt the legal business because $1,000 license fee, the short-term rental business is still very profitable. It is only $550 more than what staff recommended. So you can make that money maximum 2 days. So I don't think that would hurt that legal market. So, but what this motion does, it could put a stronger enforcement in place. We could have a better regulation, a better enforcement. Actually, the legal short-term rental operators will be beneficial from this stronger regulation, stronger enforcement. So I do see this as a win-win situation. And also this amendment will highlight the upcoming legislation from the province. So that would provide enough resource for our department to do the enforcement. So I think at the end of the day, this will be a win-win situation for for everyone in City of Vancouver. And again, that shows us our commitment for this illegal short-term rental business is not acceptable in City of Vancouver.
Thanks, Thanks, Councillor Joe. And can I ask the clerks just to pay attention to the clock because I noticed that was my. And now we'll move on to Councillor Carr.
Great, thank you. Chair, if I could ask a point of information through you to the mover of this amendment. Thank you. So I'm just wondering, Councillor Joe, who you consulted with on our staff around that, or who you consulted with in general about that particular amount. I'm just wondering why $1,000.
Yeah, so I think right now the audit is pretty low, the percentage. I don't want to quote the number here, but you all see the analysis I did. We want to boost that audit number so we can have a stronger enforcement. To do that, we need to provide more resource to our enforcement team so we can empower them to have all the resource to do the job. So that's all the intention why we are increasing the revenue to have a better and stronger enforcement in place.
Okay, I've got that connection. But I mean, was 1,000 just picked out of the hat, or was there any analysis of comparison of other municipalities? I'm just wondering, is 1,000 the right number?
Yeah, so as the number that Councillor Meisner quoted, it is very comparable with other other municipalities. So I think that's the right number, and also, that would generate $2.7 million for us to hire more staff. I think that would provide all the tools and the resource the department will need.
Do you have any examples of other municipalities that do charge $1,000? When Councillor Meisner was relaying the news, I copied those numbers down, and it was like Nelson is up to $800, but I didn't hear a $1,000 comparison. So I'm just wondering if, where in BC, for example, might there be a $1,000 fee?
Well, I don't know why, if there's no other municipality, they don't do $1,000. Why City of Vancouver, we cannot do that?
No,
we have to be bold. We are in a housing crisis,
Yeah.
and we need to use that money to support our renters and support our affordable housing.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm not seeing any further councillors on the queue, so we will proceed to a vote on the amendment to the report. And Councillor Fry, are you asking for severing, just to be clear, or not? No, okay, all right, I'll trigger the vote. Okay, and that has passed with nobody in opposition. Okay. So that takes us back to the main debate. So we now have an amended report on the floor. Any further comments on this report? This is council's opportunity, and if not, I will going once, going twice. Okay, then we'll go to a final vote on the report. Yes. Yeah, we're moving to the vote. Are you sure that you mean? 1 second, please. Okay. All right. We hadn't actually, I think, hit the voting panel on your thing on your pieces, so we will ask the clerks to sever C for separate votes. So we will vote first on C, which is the adjustments to the animal control bylaw specifically. Yes. Yes. Correct. Okay, and that passes with 2 in opposition, Councillor Carr and Councillor Fry. We'll now proceed to vote on A and B combined. Okay, and that completes the vote on A and B with none in opposition. And so that completes this item of business, the report on fees. And Councillor Joe, I'll give the chair back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Kirby. Okay, so we conclude item 2 on the agenda. So now let's move on to the next one is the council members motion. We have 3 council members motion on the agenda today. Motion A1 is the request for leave of absence as follows. Councillor Carr for civic business on September 14th, 2023 from 6 p.m. onwards. Councillor Meissner for civic business on September 14th from 1 p.m. onwards. Councillor Kirby for personal reasons on September 14th from 7 p.m. onwards. Councillor Kirby for civic business on September 13th from 9:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. And on September 14th from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. and November 14th from 6 p.m. onwards. Councillor Fry for civic business for meetings on September 14th from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. On September 28th from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. On October 18th and 19th from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. Councillor Dominado for personal reasons on September 26th from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. Councillor Dominado for civic business for meetings on October 24th from 4:20 p.m. to 5 p.m. Councillor Bligh for civic business from meetings on October 3rd from 9:30 a.m. to 12 noon. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Meissner, seconded by Mayor Sim. All those in favor say yeah. Opposed say nay. Okay, this motion carries. Motion A2 is the change to business license hearing panel. Due to the cancellations of the business license hearing on September 27th, bullet point number 3 and 4 on the motion are no longer required. So motion A2 is as follows. Councillor Claassen replaced Councillor Dominado as the alternate at the business license hearing to be held on September 26, 2023. Councillor Zhou replaced Councillor Bligh as the chair at the business license hearing to be held on September 26, 2023. Councillor Kirby replaced Councillor Zhou as the panel member at the business license hearing to be held on October 24th, 2023. Councillor Claassen replaced Councillor Kirby as the panel members at the business license hearing to be held on October 25th, 2023. Councillor Kirby replaced Councillor Claassen as the chair at the business license hearing to be held on November 22nd, 2023. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor Claassen. All in favor say yeah. Opposed say nay. The motion carries unanimously. Okay, so our last motion on the agenda is the motion A3, addressing the hotel supply gap to support tourism economy and reduce pressure on our local housing. And it is moved and introduced by Councillor Kirby. So, Councillor Kirby, you have, I would like to remind Council that in accordance to the update by procedure bylaw that was enacted on May 10th, 2023, Council member may not ask question of the movers. Councillor Kirby, you have the 2 minutes to introduce your motion.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm bringing this motion forward to address the dire shortage of hotel rooms in our city, because we know that if we don't, there literally will be no room at the inn, and the demand will exceed supply by 2026. That's a short 3 years away. So the intention of this motion is to put enabling policies in place to grow our economy, create jobs, attract global events, conferences, cultural events, and sports, and take the actions that are necessary to build the needed hotels and a competitive visitor economy. It's startling when you look at the numbers. We've lost about 550 hotel rooms for a number of reasons, and we continue to see loss that happens. It's becoming economically much more difficult to build hotels, just like it is difficult to build rental housing. It is difficult to build hotels versus more financially viable options in the case of housing with strata, and in the case sometimes in the commercial sector with office. So we need 10,000 new hotel rooms in the city of Vancouver. We have potentially 1,100 in the pipeline. I've heard from lots of individuals who have really viable and interesting hotel projects that are stalled because potentially of policies that have not kept pace. Flexibility around the ability to have mixed use. There's potential to convert surplus office with changes back to work into hotels. Mixed use buildings is another one. Looking at expanding the geographic potential of where hotels can be is another opportunity. And so what I'm asking us to do is, now that we have quantified the problem, which was done very well by an external study funded by Destination Vancouver, that we actually set targets, just like we do for housing, as to how we're going to get to this 10,000 hotel rooms, because we have jobs, billions of dollars in economic output and GDP and tax revenue, and tens of thousands of tourism jobs that are on the line. And if people can't find a room in Vancouver, or it's too expensive, we already, as I mentioned earlier, have the highest hotel rates in the country, they will go elsewhere. And that is a sobering thing when we're looking ahead and we're looking forward to FIFA. We're having phenomenal concerts that are coming here. We had a motion yesterday from Mayor Sim on the collision conference, and the potential for our city is incredibly bright. So what we're looking to do is set the targets, is to have enabling policies that remove some of those roadblocks, and to work with the industry who have sounded the alarm about this problem, so that they can help inform the strategy moving forward. I'll read a point from a letter we received from downtown Vancouver that says that they cannot underscore the urgency of the situation. It includes potential economic losses, job losses, and tax revenue shortfalls are alarming. The dire consequences for not taking decisive action to bridge the gap between hotel room supply and our demand in our city is sobering. It exacerbates the affordability crisis, making it difficult for people to live and work here. Visitors often can turn to short-term rentals, and we hear that. That's a very important issue in our city. It's not lost on me that we are debating on short-term rental fees and the importance of trying to strike the balance between protecting those homes for locals and folks that are legally renting out their short-term rental. But inevitably, it does put pressure on that. So I think that we have the solutions here, but I'm looking forward to us developing and updating our policies to get those hotels built.
Thanks, Councillor Kirby. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Claassen. We have no speakers for these items. So, Council, is there any discussion? Councillor Meisner, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And thanks to Councillor Kirby for bringing this forward. It's very important, as the councillor has so well outlined. I mean, there's been many studies on this, not just Destination Vancouver, but a lot of research showing the dire shortage of hotel rooms in Vancouver and how that really impacts our ability to attract events and conferences to the city and the economic development that goes along with those events. And also, it isn't lost on me either that we were just discussing the short-term rentals in Vancouver, and this lack of hotel rooms across the city really does put pressure on the housing market in terms of people converting homes to short-term rentals in order to alleviate the hotel room shortage. So there's many reasons why we should do this, and there's a clear need for a citywide strategy on hotels to deliver the rooms that we need and also the associated economic development for our city. So very supportive of this motion, and want to thank Councillor Kirby Young for her advocacy on this for many years and for bringing it forward today.
Thank you, Councillor Meisner. Councillor Clausen.
Yeah, I too would like to thank Councillor Kirby Young for bringing this forward. I think it's extraordinarily timing, and just very simply, the lack of hotel rooms has direct downstream costs on housing in the city. We can see that, the debate we're having around short-term rentals, for example, a very clear indication that sheer lack of supply is making available rooms just not available for people who want to come here, and or certainly for people who want to live in the city, but obviously visiting the city. And as is well spelled out in the motion itself, a huge economic potential sacrifice if we do not get more rooms on stream. Of course, it's worth noting that we've lost a lot of sort of lower and mid-tier short stay hotel rooms over the years because of a shift towards purchasing and using them for other means such as social housing. But I think we now are fully in a quest here to try and increase the number of rooms, and that will lead to, I hope, innovative solutions. There have been some musings about potentially having hotels that are located on the waterfront. There are other ideas that are out there, and I'm sure that between staff and the community at large, we will start to see some really great ideas that will be prompted by this very timely motion. So I will be supporting it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clausen. So seeing no one else on the queue, so let's put on to a vote. So clerk, can you take us to the voting panel? Council, please register your vote. Councillor Fry? Okay. Okay, so this motion does pass unanimously with Councillor Bligh, Councillor Fry, and Councillor Boyle absent. That concludes last item on our agenda. So the standing committee portion of this meeting is now complete. We will now convene in council with Mayor Sim as the chair to deal with the recommendations and actions on today's committee meeting. Do we need a motion to adjourn for this one? Okay, we need a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Clausen, seconded by Councillor Kirby Young. This meeting is adjourned.
Great job. Okay, we will now convene in council to deal with the recommendations and actions from today's Standing Committee on City Finance and Services meeting. Clerk, may we please have a roll call?
Yes, Mayor Sim is in the chair. Councillor Carr. Councillor Kirby Young. Councillor Dominato. Councillor Bligh is on leave of absence for civic business. Councillor Boyle is absent. Councillor Fry is absent. Councillor Montague. Councillor Clausen.
Present.
Councillor Meisner. Councillor Jo.
Present.
The meeting has quorum, Mayor Sim.
Great, thank you. We need a motion to adopt the committee's recommendations for reports 1 to 7 and members' motions A1 to A3. Great, thank you very much. Did we catch that, everyone? Awesome, thank you very much. All those in favor, say yay. Yay. All those opposed, say nay. Great, that motion carries unanimously. May we have a motion to adjourn? Awesome, thank you very much. Seconded? Second. All those in favor? All those opposed? Great, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.